Hi, this is John Nix. This YouTube video is to accompany an article on high-tech solutions for teaching for the Nats Journal of Singing. And the point of my portion of that article is to discuss using Madde, which is a voice synthesizer program, to train listening skills for changes in vibrato. And so over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to be demonstrating some things you can use with Madde in order to help your students or yourself learn to hear very fine changes in the vibrato rate and the vibrato extent, and even in changes in vibrato going vowel to vowel, and also changes in amplitude, so amplitude vibrato as well. First of all, just a quick reminder, right here on my screen, you can see that I have the Madde interface up, and I've made a previous YouTube video about using Voce Vista to take measurements of your vocal tract resonance frequencies and your vibrato rate and extent, and then inputting those into Madde to actually model your voice. And in this case, I have two different versions of, I've got two different windows of Madde open, and I'm just moving them around a little bit here so I can get it to, here we go. There comes the that's the one I wanted first. So I have two windows open, which will become apparent why I have that a little bit later in this presentation. So anyway, I have Madde set here for, these are actually my resonance frequencies and the bandwidth of those resonance peaks, and my vibrato rate and extent. So here is my synthesized version of myself. And here's the real thing. So hopefully I've done a pretty good job of modeling myself. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of using Madde to train your perception of small changes in vibrato is to show we're going to keep the vibrato extent the same. And so the vibrato extent control is right here, amplitude, and which we know in singer teaching circles as the vibrato extent. And Madde has that in semitones, so 0.5 semitones or 50 cents. There's 100 cents in each semitone, so a half step. So this is now a quarter step. We're going to leave that one alone for now, so keep that one constant. And we're going to be adjusting the vibrato rate. And so as a training device with your students, helping them to start hearing changes in vibrato, you can play a tone. And you would not be displaying, by the way, this screen to your students because that would give away what you're doing. So again, we're going to hear a tone. So that has a vibrato rate of 5.5 times per second. And simply by typing here, now I'm going to change it to 5.0. So I slowed the vibrato rate. And the idea of doing this kind of training is that you show your students, you expose your students to pairs of tones, and you ask them, what did you hear? So that they're comparing the first one and the second one. So again, you could play and then you would say, now compare that one to this one. Chances are, because I made a pretty large change, I changed it by 0.5 hertz from 5.0 to 5.5. Chances are they'll go, well, it sounded like the vibrato was faster on the second one. So you want to start with pretty wide changes so that they're first initially aware of kind of the parameter they're listening to. And then gradually you want to make the changes between the pairs smaller and smaller. Okay, so for example, like this. And this one. So now the change in the vibrato rate is a little more subtle. That was only 0.2 hertz change. So the number of vibrato cycles per second changed by only 0.2 cycles per second. So that's getting to be a smaller change. I'll go back to that beginning one so you can hear it again. Here's the first one. And the second one. Subtly faster. I've done this hundreds of times, of course, and I'm very familiar with it, but your students might not have ever really listened that carefully to vibrato rate before. And you might liken it to going to the optometrist to get a new set of glasses, you know, where you're being checked and they say, okay, now is it better with 1 or with 2? With 1 or with 3? And so you're just getting them to listen to pairs of tones that are matched in every way except for one parameter. You're getting them to hone in on that one thing, the vibrato rate. And eventually, you know, you can control the vibrato rate here on Madde all the way out, you know, to 5 decimal places. So you can really make some very subtle changes. My guess is that most people don't hear changes more subtle than about 1/10 of a hertz. So here is 5.5. Here's 5.6. That's a pretty subtle change. You can train yourself, obviously, by using a program like this to really get the ability to, you know, hone in, just like using the most recent version of Voce Vista, where you can put the frequency sliders on there. You can take a particular band and you're only listening to that particular band, or you can take a particular band out. Kind of a similar thing here, where you're maintaining all the parameters the same except for one small thing which you're adjusting. Really helps you on a perceptual level hone in listening to that one thing. Now, so that's adjusting vibrato rate. Now you can also do the same with vibrato extent. So now we're going to keep the vibrato rate at 5.5 and we're going to adjust the vibrato extent. So here's 1. And here's 2. So I made it much narrower. So it was 20 cents, plus or minus. That's a very important point to bring up, and that is the fact that this is semitones above and below, cents above and below this central frequency. So I have the synthesizer set at 220 hertz, and the fluctuations right now are 20 cents above and below that. You can make an absolutely straight tone like this. Now you may hear some very slight fluctuations in that because there is a very small flutter that is added in there to make it sound more human. At any rate, you can take it all the way down to where there's basically no amplitude swing at all, no frequency swing at all. So let's go back now to our starting point, 0.5 hertz, sorry, 0.5 semitones, 50 cents. Now we're going to make just a smaller change. It's very subtly wider in the extent. What's very interesting is oftentimes if I do this in a classroom from my experience in teaching this. If I present this sound and this sound without telling the students what I'm doing, they'll say that the rate increased, but the rate did not increase. The frequency swing increased. So it's an interesting little paradox there where, because they're hearing a wider excursion occur at that same rate, they will often at first feel like, well, you changed the rate, you made the rate faster, and I didn't. Interesting little side effect there. So again, back to our starting point. And I would urge you in presenting pairs, see, that's just slightly narrower, to do both directions, to increase and decrease the extent. And you can, having done a pair where you do, for instance, 0.5, and then do 0.3, then the next time you present a pair, start from 0.3 and go the opposite direction, where I made it wider. So lots of fun there. You can just present them pairs. And again, by doing that, they're able to kind of put on blinders and say, okay, I'm only noticing this parameter. Now, eventually, we're going to start changing both. So that brings me to my next point here, and that is to present a tone and then change one of the parameters. I'm going to change rate this time. And you ask your student or students, which changed? Did the rate change or did the extent change? Here's another example of that. So here's one. And here's two. So after you essentially train listening for rate and then listening for extent, then you start presenting them with, you're changing one or the other, and you ask them which one changed, which direction did it change? So if I changed rate, then you're saying, okay, you're correct. I did change the rate. What did I do to the rate? Okay, you made it slower. Okay, how much slower? So you're training them to first identify what it is they're hearing, and then what happened to it. Did it get faster? Did it get slower? Did it get wider? Did it get narrower? And then the magnitude of the change. Was it a small change? Was it a large change? So you're building their ability to discriminate very subtle changes. Then, of course, you can do some training where you're changing both parameters at the same time. So you could present this, and then you could present this. And the correct answer would be the vibrato got slower and wider. So changing both parameters and then getting them to parse out, okay, what happened to you said the vibrato changed. Okay, what changed about the vibrato? Well, the rate got slower. How much slower? Markedly slower. Okay, and the extent got wider. How much wider? Quite a bit wider. So you get them to where first they hear them independently, and then they can start to notice changes that are happening at the same time. Now I'm going to bring up that second window of second panel, or second second controller. So now on the screen I have a synthesized version of my ah vowel. Now get them identical to each other in terms of rate and extent. So here's my ah. And now here's the same pitch and the same vibrato rate and the same vibrato extent, but an E vowel. So ah, E. The point of doing this is after you get your students where they're able to discriminate subtle changes in the vibrato rate, subtle changes in the vibrato extent, then parsing out, I hear a change, what change did I hear? What direction did the change occur? How large was the change? And then hearing changes in both and being able to do that. Now we have two vowels up at once. And I would start with using the same rate and the same extent. I would introduce this idea on both. And again, not tell the students and just say, okay, what do you hear? Tell me about the vibrato rate and the vibrato extent. The correct answer is it's the same rate and it's the same extent. However, you may get some disagreement from your students on that because we are very much affected by timbral things. And I'm going to point out in just a few moments one of the things that weighs into our perceptions of vibrato when it comes to changing vowels. And so with, the same kind of methodical approach, you could make a change in one of the vowels. So I'm going to make the extent narrower on the E vowel, and then you would present them. Here's a pair of tones. Listen to them. Tell me what changed. The correct answer is the E vowel extent of the vibrato was narrower. And getting your students to be able to first one characteristic at a time, you say, okay, let's listen only to the extent of the vibrato, and you go back and forth between the two vowels. Then you could have them listen just for the rate of the vibrato, go back and forth between the two vowels, making subtle changes. And then gradually, okay, now you change one parameter, but you don't tell them which parameter you changed. And you say, okay, present the two vowels, and they say, oh, the rate on the E vowel was faster than the rate on the A vowel. Great, so now they're able to identify what parameter changed between the two vowels, then get them to where they can, parse out you making changes on both. For instance, something like this. So I've typed in, there'll be a faster rate and a wider extent on the E vowel. And E. So most people would certainly identify that the rate got faster when they went to the E vowel, but they might not catch that change in amplitude or extent, that the extent was actually wider. So let's listen to those pairs again. One possible way to approach this, you could certainly just present them with things and see what they can notice, but I would suggest doing some where you tell them what you're doing. You could show them the screen and tell them what you're doing, and then present some where you don't show them the screen and you don't tell them what they're doing and they have to identify. Then the last thing that I wanted to show you has to do with, and I'm clicking on a little box on the Madde interfaces. And what it's done now is it's showing the harmonics. So here's my fundamental F0. Here's 2F0, 3F0, 4F0, or, you know, first harmonic, second harmonic, third harmonic, fourth harmonic, fifth harmonic. So it's showing the harmonic series for this fundamental, and it's also showing this red shading is indicating where these resonances are. So here we've got that first resonance occurring. This is here at about F4, I'm sorry, about F5. So 687 Hertz. And you can see that my third harmonic is actually very close to where that vowel resonance is. And the width of this shaded area depends upon the bandwidth that I've programmed in. So here on the ah vowel, you can see that this third harmonic and fifth harmonic are very close to those two vowel resonances, the first and second vowel resonances. And so those harmonics, as they swing through those resonances, are going to be changing in amplitude. You know, as the harmonic gets right in the center of the peak, it's going to be louder. As it swings away, it's going to get softer. So we would expect that this harmonic is going to get louder, softer, louder, softer, louder, softer as I go through the vibrato cycle, while this one is going to be probably softer, louder, softer, louder, softer, louder on the lower end of the vibrato swing as the harmonic swings closer to that center frequency of the vowel resonance. So let's listen to that. I could even highlight that change by taking out some of this other harmonics below those. Oops. Ian Howell is so much better at this than I am. Touching these individual harmonics without dragging the other ones. Well, suffice it to say, you can do that. I'm not going to try to do that today. Now here with the E vowel, you can see that the first resonance actually lies right between harmonics 1 and 2. And then the second vowel resonance is way, way up here. So we're not going to have a marked effect here. It's hard for us to discriminate these higher harmonics. It's harder for us to resolve them. And again, because the vowel resonance is kind of between the first and second harmonic, even though these things are going to be swinging around, there's not going to be an appreciable change in the intensity. However, as we get harmonics closer and closer, particularly the second harmonic and the fundamental itself, the first harmonic, close to this first vowel resonance, amplitude changes are going to be a little more obvious. So let's do that. So I'm going to have the synthesizer running continuously, and I'm going to gradually bring the frequency higher so you'll hear that interaction. That's pretty obvious right there. Okay, so here's D natural. So as that second harmonic gets into the influence of that first resonance, you probably noticed that the intensity went up overall, and you start to hear a pulse that was actually in synchrony with the frequency change. And that's because I still had that harmonic slightly below that central peak. So let's listen to that again. start to hear it. And now I'm going to have that right in the middle of it. And you may notice when it's right in the middle of it, that wom, 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 effect, you're hearing that harmonic sweep away from, through, away from, and through that place where the vowel resonance is going to boost that harmonic's intensity. Also might note that the third harmonic is right smack in the middle of the second vowel resonance. So we're kind of getting two for the price of one here. Let's continue raising the fundamental. Now you're starting to hear the influence of the second resonance on the second harmonic. So this is a D5. So I'm going to play D5 where the fundamental is below any influence really of that vowel resonance. And then I'm going to play E5 where we're kind of on the lower threshold of it. And at that point, you should be hearing that the swing in the intensity and the swing in the frequency are in sync with each other. Because as the harmonic swings up, the intensity goes up. As the harmonic swings down, the intensity goes down. So they'll be in phase with each other. So here's D natural. Okay, and now I'm going to get it right in the middle. When we're right in the middle, and it's especially true if I make the extent of the vibrato a little bit wider, I think you'll start to notice this effect very, very strongly. So first, here's on the lower side of the resonance, where they're still in phase with each other. And now here's right in the middle of that resonance. And that's a situation where the frequency swing is occurring at half the rate of the intensity swing. Because again, if I'm right in the middle, if my harmonic is right aligned with that vowel resonance, it's going to get softer, louder, softer, louder, softer, louder, softer, louder. So the frequency swing will be occurring one time every cycle, but the intensity swing, because it's going to swing through that center point twice in every cycle on the way down and on the way back up. So the intensity swing is going to happen at double the rate of the frequency swing. Now, as we move higher, we'll start to get a different effect. Where the intensity swing and the frequency swing are completely out of phase with each other. So that the intensity is highest at the low part of the vibrato, and as the frequency goes up, as the vibrato swings up, that it's actually losing intensity because you're moving away from that vowel resonance. And so just playing those three options here for students to listen to, where the vibrato frequency swings and the intensity vibrato swings occur in phase with each other. This is where the harmonic is slightly below that vowel resonance. And then right in the middle of the vowel resonance. And then slightly above it. So more things to use with your students to really tune their ears up, really get them sensitive to particular aspects of vibrato, the frequency rate, the vibrato rate, and then the vibrato extent, and this is the frequency extent, and then listening for changes in amplitude, particularly when we're around these places where the second or first harmonics, either 1F0, 2F0, are coming into close proximity, especially to the first vowel resonance. All right, so that wraps it up, and hopefully this makes some of the topics that I covered in the article a little more clear. Enjoy playing with Madde. It's a lot of fun, and I leave you to it, and I'd love to hear from people who have more ideas about using this as a training tool. Thanks a lot.